What if you woke up one day to find that everyone except for you was happy? This is the question Pluribus seems poised to answer. Halfway through its official trailer, it presents the statement, happiness is a state of mind, which is objectively true. Happiness is a feeling we have as humans when we're content, receive affection, feel joy, or even experience pleasure. It's possible to feel happy for no reason, but it's usually tied to something we've done that has lowered our negative emotions and increased our sense of well-being. It's almost always a good thing that we end up spending a high percentage of our time chasing. So on the surface, it's almost hard to imagine why someone would want to make it stop if everyone else was experiencing it. Hopefully the answers to that will become clearer if you follow along with this video. If you watched my other video, What is Pluribus? Or have just been taking in the drip feed of short teasers Apple TV Plus has been releasing in the lead up to the November 7th release of its new sci-fi show, and if you've been following all of that, you know the marketing team has been putting on a clinic in building anticipation. Since a lot of you will have already watched my video, I'll leave a link at the top for those who haven't, rather than rehashing it all here. As I mentioned there, I did enjoy this approach at first. But after a couple of months of it, I found myself ready for something more substantial. Now that's here, so we should definitely talk about that today. A quick primer on what we know going into the first season of Pluribus. It's been described as mild science fiction by its creator Vince Gilligan, who's also responsible for two of my all-time favorite shows, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Those are heavy on crime, so the shift in genre might give you pause, but don't worry. Gilligan made a name for himself in TV on his first job writing for The X-Files. He attaches the modifier mild here because the show has a classic sci-fi element, but doesn't involve space opera or people flying around on spaceships. It's set in Albuquerque, starring Rhea Seehorn as a damaged hero reluctantly trying to save the world. The cast and crew have been explicit that despite some location Easter eggs that will arise from shooting in the same city, the show definitely doesn't take place in the Breaking Bad universe. So no, this isn't Kim Wexler who's still on the run, and there shouldn't be any of Walter's blue meth floating around. The marketing campaign has been intentionally vague, but in interviews it's been said that the show draws inspiration from The Twilight Zone, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the Borg from Star Trek. The show's title, Pluribus, is Latin for more, but it's best known from the motto of the United States, E Pluribus Unum. In that phrase, it means many, as it translates to out of many one, which hints at a possible hive mind if the Borg reference wasn't enough. Coupled with the tagline, happiness is contagious, and some of the imagery in the promo materials and teasers, there seems to be a happiness virus that transforms people. Those have also shown Seehorn's character Carol as immune to this phenomenon, leading her to confusion and rage as she seeks answers. Gilligan, who wrote the role specifically for her, aims to present an old-fashioned hero in a genre-bending original that's both philosophical and hilariously funny. So in other words, precisely what you'd expect from looking at his body of work. The trailer opens with a shot looking out a window. Carol is in bed, it seems like she just woke up, and she's holding a landline telephone up to her ear. A voice on the other end says, "Good morning, Carol. Is there anything we can do to cheer you up?" It cuts to her lifting the lid on a serving platter, revealing a pretty scrumptious looking breakfast beneath. There's fresh coffee, OJ, fruit, and eggs. And after giving that all a good look, she dumps it directly into her trash can. This is the first indication that she doesn't trust whoever sent it to her. After that, the Righteous Brothers version of You'll Never Walk Alone kicks in, and this is where it started to really feel like we were back to me. Better Call Saul featured several songs like this to great effect as mood enhancers in its run. The previously released teasers were short on dialogue and music, which was fine and served to maintain the mystery, but the use of this particular track really makes this trailer feel like a complete package in the way that those didn't. The song originated in the 1945 Rodgers and Hammerstein Broadway musical Carousel and became a pop hit when Jerry and the Pacemakers recorded it in 1963. They were a band from Liverpool, so fans of the professional football club there formed the tradition of singing along to that version during their games. People like me who grew up in the States with no exposure to Premier League football eventually got to know it from the recording of them doing that that at the end of the Pink Floyd song Fearless. To get back to the action, in the next part of the trailer we see Carol walk into a grocery store that looks completely abandoned, which is consistent with most of the previous release teasers we've seen her in. Since they kept the mystery surrounding the show going as long as they could and primarily showed Carol alone, it wasn't entirely clear what was going on in the outside world. It's not necessarily clear by the end of this trailer, but in the next scene we see that people are still around. A group of them appears to have descended on Carol's house in Albuquerque, which is likely connected to the phone call, and this idea of cheering her up. They look like they're fixing up her yard when she pulls up and gets out of a state police cruiser. And we saw her driving around in one of those in Las Vegas in the Welcome Carol teaser. It could be the same one. Albuquerque to Vegas is probably only a 9-hour drive or so, but I've been thinking the scenes we've seen on the plane were of her flying there. So maybe when she requests a tank later in the trailer, it might back up the idea that perhaps this is just her preference. Maybe that's just the car she picks if she has her choice of anything to drive around in. We do know she's not a police officer. In interviews, both Rhea Seehorn and Vince Gilligan have confirmed that she's a successful romance novelist. Her ride doesn't set off any alarm bells for the people gathered at her home, who all say, "Hey Carol," in unison as she makes her approach. This is echoed in the very next scene where we see her with the cop car again wearing different clothes, where a man with a delivery truck instantly recognizes her and offers a "Hey Carol" of his own. In both instances, Rhea Seehorn does a pretty solid job of expressing that all this recognition is something Carol does not enjoy, which is funny because you imagine everyone she encounters does something similar with a smile on their face. This brought the promotion they announced a week ago into focus, in that the showrunner asked people to make short video clips reading one of 4 prompts and send them in. Apple TV Plus would go through them and fans might have their footage included in an official video. The prompts read, "Hi Carol, join us. Carol, we just want to make you happy. We're sorry we upset you, Carol, join us. Hi Carol, your life is your own." These all seem to be in sync with the text message campaign they did, where if you called the number that was featured in some of the early teasers, they would send messages to your phone. I bring this up because I mentioned the hive mind theory in my first Pluribus video, and the official teaser released a week or so after I put that out was moving in the direction of confirming it. This full trailer contains a lot of the same footage as the teaser, and in my mind it does appear to confirm that's what we're dealing with. In the next scene, Carolina Wydra's character, Zosia, assures Carol that they just want her to be happy. This use of the collective we, as in, is there anything we can do to cheer you up? We just want you to be happy, is very hive mind coded. If they hadn't said anything else about the show's premise, you might think it was a cult or something along those lines. The official logline of the show is just the most miserable person on Earth has to save the world from happiness. It doesn't address how the world got that way, but now that we've got a look at how affected they all seem to be, it seems more invasive than falling under the spell of a charismatic leader. Also, another promo image featured an illustration of someone swabbing a petri dish with the tagline, "Happiness is contagious," which suggests it's a happiness virus. I'm not a biologist, but the internet tells me you can culture viruses in petri dishes if they contain a layer of living host cells that the virus can infect. Plus, we're at the point where we can start to put together all the disparate pieces from the preseason teasers. The first one featured a woman licking a donut, putting it back in the box, and handing them out to everyone in a work environment. That seems like a pretty good way to spread a virus. In the official teaser, we were introduced to a character I presume is the President of the United States, since he's standing at a podium in the White House while speaking to Carol through the TV in her living room. The actor is Peter Bergman, who you might recognize if you watch The Young and the Restless, where he racked up the most episodes I've ever seen while looking someone up on IMDb. This is probably the best evidence we have that the happiness virus has literally infected everyone except Carol. In a catastrophic outbreak scenario, the one person who might have the necessary security detail and resources to avoid it would be the US president. He tells her, "Rest assured, Carol, we will figure out what makes you different." She's surprised and asks why he'd want to do that, and he says, "So that you can join us." The official teaser featured more of their conversation, and in that he says, "So we can can fix it before he adds the part about joining them. This is another example of the characters using the collective we. And as I've already mentioned, the hive mind theory seems all but confirmed. In the extended conversation, it's clear they pursued her to get her to call him. This is probably also similar to the text message campaign, but while they're talking, he echoes what Zosha said in her call about being willing to give her anything she needs. Her reaction here is also the first indication that even though everyone seems to be happy now, it probably isn't all it's cracked up to be. Not only does she ask why he says they want to fix her, but the sequence ends with her asking what the F. I mean, she says the word, but the edit cuts it off. Beyond the president, we get brief introductions to a slew of new characters. Carlos Manuel Vesga plays the first, who is apparently named Manusos. I'll just be honest up front, I really have no idea what's going on with him or how he fits into things based on what we see. There's a shot of him driving along a coastline in a small MG convertible. His license plate says Paraguay. It's a vanity plate that reads El Fritz. However, I believe the shot where we see him driving through a town is from when they shot on location in Spain. Later in the trailer, we see him breaking into a storage unit by cutting off its lock, followed by a creepy shot of him licking the lid of a can of food he just opened. These give him a sinister vibe, but as I've already said, they're entirely out of context. There's one other scene where he's walking in the dark and we see him turn around when some lights come on behind him, but it's hard to say what's going on there. That cuts to an outdoor shot with a smiling crowd gathered around an ambulance where we see Kevin Chambers' character, who's a doctor, turn around to look in Carol's direction. This feels connected to the sorry about the blood teaser and the promo pic where we saw these two together inside a hospital. Like everything else connected to this show, we don't have any additional information, but the thing that stands out about this scene is the festive vibe of the people milling around. Not what you'd expect at an incident involving an ambulance. And this is something I'll come back to. If we're talking about vibes, the scenes introducing Samba Sholto's character feature a refined one. If I'm most intrigued by Manusos, I'm most excited to see what this guy has cooking. His place is upscale, with a bunch of good-looking, well-dressed people attending a party. They seem to be enjoying the new state of affairs, and this is further backed up by Carol joining a large group of people at his place for a meal, where many are wearing matching fur coats. I might be mistaken, but when she looks on the table at him, I think it's the only time we see her with a genuine smile on her face. While these characters add more questions rather than answers to the mix, Robert Bailey Jr.'s character is there to give us some evidence for why Carol might not see the happiness virus taking over everyone besides her as the dawning of a great utopia. This is an actor I'm familiar with from another Apple TV show, For All Mankind, and I feel like his brief exchange with Carol gives us some answers. It opens with him telling her we would move heaven and earth to make you happy. It cuts away to some shots of her playing golf, which also includes her driving her cart past an American bison, and some chaotic scenes that will come back up in a minute. We also see a bunch of smiling people walking in single file lines that really drive home how synced up everyone seems to be. Everyone except Carol, of course, and I think Seehorn delivers some of her best, just infuriated by all of it faces in this section of the trailer. After a quick shot of her sitting outside her house that involves fireworks, and another where she leans into staring Zosha down in her living room, it cuts back to Carol grilling Robert Bailey's character, and this is when it gets interesting. She asks if he would give her a hand grenade, and continues to escalate, asking for that tank I mentioned earlier, and he just agrees to all of it. None of it, including a request for a bazooka, sets off any alarm bells for him. This strongly suggests that the happiness the virus brings doesn't just lead to real contentment. It also seems to strip away their good senses, which brings up the question, what would you be willing to give away to feel happy all the time? Building on that, this state also seems to lead to some adverse consequences. One thing that struck me as the most significant contrast from the short teasers was the chaos and destruction in the background of some of these scenes. I mentioned Zosha telling her they just want her to be happy, and Carol follows up in that scene on the airplane with the question, How do I reverse all this? By that point, we don't know why she would want to do that, but visually, it's juxtaposed with a shot of the plane taking off with a bunch of crashed vehicles and people standing around on the runway. This includes the yogurt delivery truck from the earlier scene, where the smiling driver said hello and called her by name. This shot comes off very differently from the first one we had of this plane in the preparing for takeoff teaser, though if you look closely you can see plumes of smoke in the distance in that one as well, something we see a couple of times in this trailer. It's in this section of it that we get a glimpse of the human drama you'd expect from a writer's room Vince Gilligan put together. Carol looks devastated by what she sees the world turning into. In one sequence, we see her driving away with a crashed bus and flames behind her. Someone is using a fire extinguisher on it, but it all adds up to making the world feel pretty hectic. Since I brought up writers, if you look closely at this scene, you'll see a cameo by Thomas Snows. And the group he's with is all wearing matching t-shirts with his face on them. He was a writer and producer on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and directed some of my favorite Saul episodes. I had read he was involved with the mini room before the writer's room on Pluribus, but couldn't participate beyond that due to other commitments, so it's good to see that he was still a part of the production in one way or another. But the chaos here provides the context for Carol's crying at the end of this section. She is described as a curmudgeon, but her aversion to the hive mind seems to be based on more than her disposition. It also explains the look on her face in the final scene of the trailer, which connects the dots related to some of the teasers. The airline's name, Wayfarer, gives us the trailer's most prominent Easter egg. Wayfarer 515 was one of the planes involved in the mid-air collision in the finale of Breaking Bad's second season. And we also watched Saul being transported on a Wayfarer plane after his arrest in the Saul finale. So what does it all mean? This trailer for Pluribus masterfully deepens the mystery, confirming our suspicions about a virus and a hive mind, while also hinting at the devastating cost of such widespread, unrestrained happiness. Vince Gilligan and his team are clearly crafting another complex, character-driven story that will challenge our perceptions of happiness and control. What would you be willing to give away in exchange for constant contentment? Of course, the source of the virus is a big question, and even though I know Ray had comments in interviews that appear to rule out alien involvement, as a big sci-fi fan, I keep coming back to it. One of the first things I read about the show came directly from Vince and compared it to E.T., the extraterrestrial, and I mean, come on, they compare it to Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the spoiler-free reviews. Wherever it comes from, I'm incredibly excited to watch Carol's journey to try to reverse it. And I expect to do a lot of laughing along the way while having plenty of questions to explore alongside all of you in between episodes. It looks great. There are actual colors in some of these frames, which is always a bonus in today's TV. And it's recognizable as a Vince Gilligan show. And I don't know, what stood out to you most in this trailer? I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.